So let's talk about the Young Coders competition. So we are on a mission. We are looking for children such as yourselves all around the country who think they've got what it takes to be in the Young Coders crew in 2026. Never coded? No problem. Don't know what coding is? Also no problem. All you need is determination, perseverance, and some teammates to be in your crew. So, what is a coder? If anybody would like to write in the chat, what do you think a coder is? I'll give you about 30 seconds. Someone who programs games, okay. So let's find out what a coder is. A coder is someone who creates things using a computer. All computers, they need code, not just computers, tablets, phones, everything that's kind of technological might need code, and it can make them do anything from controlling your microwave to apps on a tablet or games that you might play on a computer or your tablet. So does that sound interesting, being a coder? This is a countrywide competition looking for young people who have the skills to be crowned the Young Coders Crew for this year. So this competition is open for children who are aged between 8 and 13. So you need to be in years 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. You can enter as an individual, so you can enter as yourself or in a team of 2 to 6 people. To enter, you must make a game using Scratch and have an adult submit your entry on our website. And look, there's Scratch. You might have used this this platform to make something in the past. So if you have, that's really good. You'll be able to do this competition. So let's talk about prizes. When you're in a competition, you'll maybe get a chance to win some prizes. So each winning child will get the prestige of having the Young Coders Crew title for a whole year and a personalised award to prove it. And if you're winner, you'll also get to receive some prize money for your school. And they might use it to get some new tech for you, or they might buy you some sweets. It's really up to your teachers what they decide to do with that money. But first place can win £200, second place £100, and third place can be £50. So even if you don't win, anyone who enters gets a certificate to say that they've entered, to show to everybody that you have participated in our competition, and you also get feedback from our judges. So our judges, and we've got one of them on today, they are people who work in the tech industry. So they are coders and they've been coding as their job. So what they do when they're doing their coding is they'll get paid to do it, and they'll code all the different technology that you might use around you. So this year's competition, each year we have a theme, and this year's theme is Neighbourhood Navigators. So this year's theme is Neighbourhood Navigators. The challenge is to create a game using Scratch to teach other children exciting facts about your local area. So imagine creating a game that teaches your friends about the history of where you live, any famous landmarks or people in your neighbourhood, or the local wildlife and environment. Imagine building a game where players can explore their community, discover hidden gems, or even become a virtual tour guide. The game must feature at least 3 interesting facts about your local area. And the more creative and fun your game, the better. I'm going to give you some interesting facts about where I'm from. So I'm from a city in the UK in the East Midlands, and it is called Leicester. So one interesting fact about Leicester is that we have one of the biggest crisp factories in the UK. Walker's crisps. I haven't got any with me, but they're like my favourite crisps. Another fact would be that we found a king in one of the car parks in the centre of the city. It was King Richard III. And then I might say a famous person from Leicester that you might know of is Gary Lineker. So he used to be a footballer. So there's 3 interesting facts that I might feature in my game if I was doing a game. If you've got any ideas, maybe have a think about that for when you're doing your game. So we hope that this theme sparks your interest in discovering the world around you. Let us know what's going on in your local community or your town or even your country. Becoming a true neighbourhood expert. Are you ready to become a neighbourhood navigator? Well, here's your chance. So now I'm going to pass over to my friend Gray. They are a STEM ambassador and they are a technical support consultant at a software company.
So, hi, my name is Gray. I work for a software company in Birmingham as a technical support consultant. I mostly use something called operating system code to help maintain applications and servers. And some of the applications that I work with help public services and the NHS and local councils run smoothly, make sure they have financial planning through the year. So what is an operating system? An operating system, or OS, is how a computer knows how to function. Kind of like how our brain knows how to do things, an operating system is that for a computer. So for example, you have Windows on your school PCs. So when you go to open a folder or open a document, behind those clicks, a command window is running a specific command. So commands are basically a computer saying, do this thing. So like when you open a folder, it runs the command cd, which means change directory. And it will normally have what directory after that. And then at the same time does the command dir, which means directory, which is a computer's understanding of what a folder is. And a directory command will list and show you what is in that folder, whether it be other folders or PowerPoint. That almost every device that we own has a operating system, from our phones, which use iOS or Android, to computers, which can use Windows and Linux. And like most cars, like modern cars, have an operating system that keeps the car running, which helps all of your internal device function, and you can control it from your phone or an iPad, basically anything that you want to use. Can you name all of the operating systems shown here?
Yeah, write in the chat if you can name any of the operating systems shown on the screen. So there's a penguin, there's a robot. What are the other things? Write in the chat what you can see and what if you know any of the names of the logos. So somebody said Linux. Is that right, Gray?
Yep, so that is the penguin.
Okay.
Linux is used on some more custom computers and private servers, which is what holds applications and databases.
Oh, we've got somebody saying Android.
Android is primarily used on phones.
And then I know that one. That one's an Apple in the bottom left.
So Apple obviously uses the operating system called iOS, which is primarily for its own phones, MacBooks. Everybody knows Windows it's easy to use, easy to understand, and kind of accessible to everybody.
Okay, and then finally somebody said in the bottom right, Windows. So let's move on to the next slide.
So what is a word that means information is collected or organized in a useful way, or even a not useful way? It can exist in almost any form, from text, numbers, sound, and images. This data is normally displayed in graphs, in charts. A pie chart or a bar chart might show how much money a business makes, or how many people got sick. There's a pie chart in a school. So database data is normally held in a database, which it can be stored on a hard drive as big as a car. or as small as your thumb. The future of technology is making us be able to store lots of information in smaller and smaller devices. Data can also be held on the internet called cloud storage. Is kind of the future of how we're going to be storing database. It's a helpful way to store data, often very securely, so it can be processed and handled appropriately around personal information, which needs to be kept private. This is what we call data handling or data science. The data has to be collected and recorded in and presented in a way that is easy to read and understand, not just for the computer to be able to look at it and say, this is the information that they want. But if like when I do my work, I have to be able to look at it as well and say, okay, this is what I need to know. And we look at databases and read them using a coding called SQL, or structured query language, that kind of helps bridge the gap between humans and machines. To give an example of that, if your school wanted to find all of the people in that school with first name is Jeremy, it could do a select from a database where first name is Jeremy, and it would give back all of the people in that school named Jeremy, all the information that it has with them. So how have they changed over the years? So before computers, a database like a shopkeeper keeping a book of records. A lot of older shops might even still do this, where they will keep a record of what has been sold for how much. Places like swimming baths, when I was younger, you had to sign in on a piece of paper to say, yes, this is my name and I'm in the building. Obviously, now we have more secure databases to track sensitive information. Like your school will hold information on you in case there's an emergency, in case you have any allergy, and just so that it knows in the same way as a doctor might track how many people it has seen with the flu, just so that it knows its services are needed best. Or your local council or nature charity might give a database of wildlife and plant life in the area, give its community more information that it needs, or if they want to go and see that wildlife, there's a and say, oh, this plant is here, or there's a group of squirrels that live in this area of a park. Why is data privacy so important? Especially today's day and age, computers made it very easy to collect and hold large amounts of data in ever larger databases. And we often don't even realize how often our data is being collected. So when you visit websites, you might pick a cookie that will collect information about what you look at, what products interest you. Sometimes they will follow you to other websites. I'll at this picture of a cat longer, so I'm interested in cats. Or your local shop or supermarket, for example, Tesco's has a Tesco Club Card as a way to collect data about how you spend your money and what you spend. A group of staff go to a Tesco's and they all swipe their card. The Tesco will know what those people have done over time. It'll be able to say, we need more of this stuff out on the shelves at this time of day. More importantly, we have to balance what could need and what shouldn't be shared. So personal data needs to be kept. And we have laws in place and how that data is used, how it's collected, and we must also have, if we don't protect it, we did something wrong and pay a fine. How is it useful? For a real example, our local hospital is running low on bandages, and someone will use an application to order 200 bandages. But that application will say, sorry, we only have 100 bandages. An applicant has said, I want to order 200. We don't have 200. It said this many. As it goes through the life cycle from delivery, it will go through multiple applications, sometimes different operating systems. And that often creates small challenges. Often a delivery company might be using a a Linux-based application might not always be able to speak to a Windows-based application. And often that will cause like small challenges that have to be navigated by me. Any questions?
Yeah, so if anybody's got any questions, write them in the chat. We've only got about 5 more minutes of the session, so get them in quick if you've got any that you'd like to ask. Great. One person has asked, how long can data be stored for?
It often changes with what type of data and with who it's being stored by. So a government might keep data on its systems a lot longer until it's updated. Some companies can only keep it for up to 10 years, and some shorter than that. It will depend on what legally is covered and why they're collecting that data.
And another person has asked, can AI be used for coding?
Yes, and also kinda. So whilst AI is increasing in the coding space and the development space and the support space, whilst it can speed up certain aspects of coding, unless that AI has gotten everything right, it might not fully work. We just, one of the spaces where I work, we can't use AI because we are using sensitive data sets. We can't always trust that the information is secure and held within UK or European area, which is a legal understanding that we don't share information with anybody. Obviously, to increase data privacy and ensure that nobody steals it.
Great, thank you, Gray. So I'm just going to finish the session by saying that we need more coders. We need you. So the ability to control technology is a very special skill to have. And if you're learning to do it now, it's something that's going to be very important as you get older. So hopefully by entering this competition and learning how to make a game, you'll be on your way to being a super coder. So maybe this year you're in our competition making a game. Maybe next year you're creating an app. After that, you could be making websites. You could be coding for the NHS. You could be coding for a police force. You could be coding for anything. So who knows? But changing the world sounds pretty good though. So could you be the best coder at your school? If you want to get involved with the competition, you're going to need to ask your teacher to help you get the information to do that. They can go to codingcompetition.org/register and they can register for you. You will need an adult who's over 18 to help you register. Good luck, happy coding, and happy British Science Week. Hopefully you've learnt a little bit more about computer science. So thank you and have a good rest of your British Science Week.